Tons of F1 fantasy managers used chips in China this weekend, but how did it go? Let's find out. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the first ever episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. It is Monday, April 22nd. My name is Ewan. On today's episode, we're going to get into the Chinese Grand Prix preview and some early Miami thoughts. But right off the bat, I want to get some house cleaning done here. Yes, you did hear that right. If you are watching on YouTube or on the podcast feed, it is F1 Fantasy Pole Position, thanks to Sports Social Podcast Network. They have teamed up with me to kind of launch a F1 Fantasy podcast. So go over to Sports Social Podcast Network, download, listen over there. It'll be coming out on Spotify, Apple, Google, all those fun places. But just a little bit of a rebrand on the audio side. I mean, it'll be the same deal here on the YouTube channel. But yes, F1 Fantasy Pole Position, brand new kind of rebrand here for the show, but nothing too fancy, just kind of getting out on the audio side with the help of those great folks over at Sports Social Podcast Network. So that's all taken care of now. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel or the podcast wherever you are watching and listening. Any support, always greatly appreciated. It's been a fantastic season already, but we're only 5 races in. We got a ton more to go. As you can see, things are going quite well over here. 2,126 in the world after a massive Limitless chip in China. I mean, I know a lot of you guys also played Limitless chip. 456 points for most of us over here. It was a fantastic weekend. Very excited to get into Miami, what kind of strategies we've got. But this will be a little bit of a review show, and there will be team selection at the end. So if you want to jump around, the timestamps are in the description below or in the episode description on the podcast side. So definitely jump around if you don't have time for the full episode, and just let me know what you think. But here are some Chinese Grand Prix facts and stats. The optimal team, this is not the Limitless team. So the optimal team here, on a regular budget that F1 Fantasy Tools has is Red Bull Racing, Ferrari, Verstappen with the 2 times, Magnussen, Gasly, Zhou Guanyu, and Albon. That would have gotten you a cool 379 points. Positions gained, Hamilton with 9, Ocon with 6, Sargent, Leclerc, and Russell with 5. Sprint weekend always kind of boosts those numbers up, but Lewis Hamilton starting off not so great in the Grand Prix after a second place in the sprint. So he made up a lot of places on Sunday. Not where he wanted to be, though. It was a tough weekend overall, or a tough Sunday, or Saturday afternoon, Sunday for the 7-time world champion. As for overtakes, Kevin Magnussen with 14, Stroll, Alonso, Hamilton with 12, and Yuki Tsunoda with 11. And then for the fastest pit stop, Red Bull, 18 points. They've won 18 of the last 30 or 23 points in the pit stop. So it's been quite a run for Red Bull here in the fastest pit stop game. They are a must-have in F1 Fantasy. Even if you have kind of been swerving them with some budget building, I would highly recommend getting back on them for another sprint weekend in Miami, which is coming right up. Optimal teams here. So I already went over it. 370 points if you had that Red Bull, Ferrari, Verstappen, Magnussen, Gasly, Zhou Guanyu, and Albon team. That was obviously the best Max, Red Bull, and Ferrari team as well. If you did not use a chip, however, if you kind of swerved away from the chips, the Perez, Red Bull, Ferrari build, the best one you could have there was Sergio Perez, Kevin Magnussen, Pierre Gasly, Zhou Guanyu, and Esteban Ocon. That would have been 102.9 million for your budget for 335 points. And then if you stuck with Leclerc, Red Bull, and Ferrari, it was Leclerc, Magnussen, Alonso, Gasly, and Zhou Guanyu. That would have cost you a lot more, 109.8 million. So you really had to have the budget for that. That would have been 326 points. Driver of the day, Lando Norris, First driver of the day award since 2023 Mexico for the British driver. He had the one overtake on the weekend, which was the fewest among all the drivers. And I was looking into this a little bit more on F1fantasytools.com this morning. He is, since driver of the day became a points thing in F1 Fantasy since the start of the 2023 season, he is the first driver to win driver of the day with negative positions gained plus overtake points since the beginning of last season. Ended on 36 points total, had -2 in the sprint on Saturday after he started on pole. Didn't go according to plan, kind of got a little greedy trying to keep his first place in the first corner with Lewis Hamilton. Did not go according to plan, but he did make up for it on Sunday in the Grand Prix with 31 points, including the Driver of the Day award. Lando Norris is a very popular driver. He is currently not kind of reaching the heights of the Ferraris or the Red Bulls, but it was supposed to be a tough weekend for McLaren. And for him to get on the podium, second place on Sunday, is a phenomenal effort. And I think Lando is going to be entering our F1 fantasy thoughts sooner rather than later. But we all came here to talk about the chips, right? Who did, who didn't play the chips. It was a whole thing the entire week on F1 Fantasy Twitter, X, where you can follow me at UNFPL. I was tweeting about it all Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Just so nerve wracking. In fact, I went to sleep at midnight. I was in Stockholm on holiday and I went to sleep at like 11 midnight and I had it locked in. I was going to go with like the Sergio lineup. I had used 2 transfers. I think I got Charles out for Sergio, and then I took Yuki out for Nico Hulkenberg. And then I woke up at 5:45 a.m. Because I'm a slight madman, and I checked the Shanghai weather. I was like, okay, if it's wet, I'm just going to kind of roll with it. I've actually already used my no negative chip in Australia, where it saved me 20 points on the Max Verstappen DNF. So I couldn't utilize it this weekend, which was maybe better because then I wouldn't have had to think about more chips. But check the weather at 4:45, and I was like, it's going to be dry on Saturday and Sunday. Let's get this limitless chip done. So Sergio, Max, Charles, Carlos, Lando, Red Bull, and Ferrari all came in, activated that limitless chip, 456 points. It all went swimmingly according to plan. Fantastic weekend. Just couldn't have planned it better. I'm also just bouncing for joy because last year, if you were with me, I used the limitless chip in Austin, where I had Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, who finished second and third before disqualifications totally bombed my season. So the limitless chip went a lot better. Let me know in the comments below or hit me up on X about how you used the limitless chip. I know some people went with Fernando Alonso, which worked out okay. It wasn't too big of a deficit. He dropped back a few positions here and there, but he ended up with the fastest lap on Sunday as well. So the Spanish veteran did quite well for himself as well. But there were a lot of other teams that went with other options this weekend. So the no negative was very popular. The middle team here, if you're listening on the podcast side, is Max Verstappen, Alexander Albon, Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu, Logan Sargent, Red Bull Racing, and Ferrari. This is the team I would have had to run if I had just gone with Max without the limitless chip. So it was nice to see this team is actually F1 Fantasy Hub's team. So shout out to Rob there. He actually used one more transfer to get this squad in, but he did use the no negative. So he saved himself quite a number of points. -10 for one extra transfer, it looks like. But I believe him and Adam, F1 Fantasy HQ, saved almost 35, 40 points. Let me know if you used the no negative chip and how many points you saved at the Shanghai International Circuit this weekend. And the third team here is the no chips team with Max. So this was Max, Logan, Valtteri, Yuki Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, and Ferrari and Red Bull. I wouldn't have had the budget for Yuki Tsunoda. I would have had to run Alexander Albon. But as you can see here, Valtteri Bottas took -14 due to his DNF and engine failure on his part, which is very unfortunate. And Yuki Tsunoda with -6 points as well after he was unceremoniously dumped out of the race by Kevin Magnussen. Yeah, it wasn't a great look for the Danish driver yesterday, but that's the breaks, unfortunately, in F1. Just one kind of decision by another driver could totally end your Sunday. But you can see here on the graphics. So for Rob's no negative team, Valtteri Bottas scored 9 points. And then with the no chips with Max team, Valtteri Bottas had negative 14. So that's a huge swing, 23 points just on the no negative chip alone. So if you decided to activate the no negative chip, it was a safe play. It worked out well. I'm assuming that the limitless chip is going to come in handy next week for Miami for you. I'm going to cover both of those options going forward, but we'll get closer to Miami next week for the Miami Grand Prix preview, where I'm hoping to have a guest who is currently flying in F1 fantasy. So looking forward to hearing their thoughts on the first American race of this season. But yes, these were the three main strategy here: limitless, no negative, and no chips. Limitless went so well, just 1 through 5. It was the sprint race. It all went according to plan. So if you use it this weekend, thumbs up to you. Give me a like. Just let me know what you played and what your future chip strategy is for the Miami Grand Prix. Going over some price changes here, not a ton of movement, but some premium assets did go up 0.3. So Verstappen went up his usual 0.2. He's now back above where he started. He's at 30.1 on the season after starting at 30 on race 1. The 0.7 he took in Australia, he's finally climbed that back up. So he's good to go. Lando Norris, Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton all went up 0.3 as they are in the second tier of the bucket of the price rising that we've gone over before this season. So strong weekend for all of those assets. And just a reminder that if you use the limitless chip in Shanghai, the team that you had for Suzuka, the Japanese Grand Prix, that was the team that gained budget for you. So for me, I had Charles Leclerc, I had Lance Stroll. So I went up 0.8 here, according to this graphic, as despite a not great weekend for the Canadian driver, Lance Stroll still managed to go up 0.5. Really helps being in that third tier of drivers, where it's a lot easier to go up in price, although he is only 2 million away from rising up into that second tier. So if you're not on Lance Stroll right now, I would highly recommend getting on him before he gets into that second tier and becomes somewhat of a not so attractive F1 fantasy asset. Looking at the bottom 10 drivers here: Ocon, Ricciardo, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Gasly, Hulkenberg, Albon, Zhou Guanyu, Logan Sargent, and Valtteri Bottas. Esteban Ocon, Kevin Magnussen, Pierre Gasly, Alexander Albon, and Zhou Guanyu all went up 0.5. So Ocon now re-leads the kind of Formula B, if you would call it that way, in price. Ricciardo fell 0.2 after his DNF, a double DNF for Visa Cash App RB. Not a great weekend for them. Kevin Magnussen, again, 0.5. He is flying. He started the season at 6.2 million. He's now at 8.7. He's climbed 0.5 every single week. I have missed the boat on Kevin Magnussen. Let me know if you did not. You have probably got a high flying budget right now, and I am very jealous of that. Pierre Gasly got back up to where he started 7.8 at the start of the season. He's kind of just been ticking downwards as Alpine is kind of pulling a tractor around an F1 track, but he went up 0.5 this weekend. The DNFs definitely helped with Bottas, and the Visa Cash App RB double DNF. That kind of dragged down the driver average. So a lot of drivers were able to go back up in price. Alexander Albon went up 0.5. Zhou Guanyu went up 0.5. No huge fallers here. Tsunoda, Ricciardo down 0.2. Hulkenberg down 0.1. Valtteri Bottas is now the cheapest driver in the game at 6.2 million. As for the constructors here, we've got Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, and Aston Martin. They all went up, but they didn't tick along too much. Red Bull 0.2. They're so expensive, they can't go up much higher. McLaren, Oscar Piastri didn't have a phenomenal weekend. in Shanghai. So McLaren did not get up to that point 0.3 marker, but Ferrari, Mercedes both went up point 0.3. Aston Martin went up point 0.1. Visa Cash App RB went down point 0.2, so they're 8.4 million. Alpine and Haas are both above 8 million now as well after 500,000 price rises. So Alpine is 8.4, Haas is 8.2. Sauber is now the cheapest asset in the game, 5.9 million, and Williams is 6.3. So Williams is right where they started the season. Sauber has fallen 0.7 since the first race of the year. So it is not going well for the Kick Sauber Stake F1 team, not one bit. Here is the league updates for the Backup Fantasy Sports League. So the season top 5 here: Leapers won at 1434, the Jays at 1429, Seat for Signs 1413, S Duck Deluxe 1401, tied with I Can't Think of a Name, also at 1401. So great job by those teams being in the top 5. There's over 1,000 of us in that league right now. I thought I was doing pretty well at 40, but you guys are absolutely flying. Let me know in the comments below what your overall rank is. I think I'm doing quite well, almost in the top 2,000 after 5 races, but you guys must be crushing it. And as for the Chinese Grand Prix top 5 teams from that, 101 of us all played the same Limitless team for 456 points. So that's Max Verstappen with the 2 times, Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris with Ferrari and Red Bull as your constructors. 101 of over, like, I think there's almost 1,200 teams in the league right now. So that is a lot of teams using the same chip. I know some people went different with Fernando Alonso, so they suffered a little bit there, but overall, just wow, 101 teams playing the same Limitless chip. Taking a look here at my T1 squad, this is the one that's 2126 in the world. I've got Charles Leclerc, Lance Stroll, Yuki Tsunoda, Valtteri Bottas, Alexander Albon with Red Bull and Ferrari. I have already worked this out, and I have exactly enough money to get Max Verstappen in to my team. But that does mean that I will be running Max Verstappen, Joe Guan Yu, Logan Sargent, Valtteri Bottas, and Alexander Albon. It's just bang on the money. It is so close. I couldn't have planned it any better, unfortunately. Well, I mean, I wish I could have had more budget. That would have helped a lot too. Let me know what your budget is. Let me know if you're stuck with this, if you want Max in Miami. Make me jealous with how much budget you have. So this is where I'm going to have to go if I want Max in. And if we think about what I was showing in the previous graphic with the Limitless versus Max, and then the Max with no chips or whatever, like, it does feel like you have to get Max in for a sprint weekend, as the Red Bull driver is just on another planet right now. 2 times in a sprint race is just too many points to waste. I'll worry about budget when we get to Imola, the next race after Miami. It's just, there are too many points to leave on the table. There's going to be I think a lot of people who did not play their Limitless chip in Shanghai will be activating it in Miami. Let me know if you're going to be one of those. Hit me up on X at UNFPL or leave a comment below. Let me know what you're thinking for that. I'm assuming teams will look very similar compared to what us Limitless managers just played in Shanghai as well. But this is kind of the team that I am rocking with in Miami. I would think it's going to cost me 10 points. So a wild card is potentially on the table for me just to save those points. I'm going to be playing catch up to the Limitless managers next week. I'm sure a lot of us are who used the Limitless chip in Shanghai. We're going to be kind of hoping for a high profile DNF on South Beach in a couple of Sundays time, but we will see, because yeah, I'm struggling. I got 0.0 in the bank here, but I can get Max Verstappen in for 10 points. Do I want to give 10 more points back to the field, or should I activate the wild card? Going to be tough to say as of right now. We'll see what updates we're going to get, or upgrades will be coming to Miami. There's rumors that McLaren and Mercedes and possibly Red Bull are bringing some more upgrades to the first race in America, but this is my T1 team that does not have a lot of budget, and this is where I will be with Max Verstappen, Zhou Guanyu, Logan Sargent, Valtteri Bottas, Alexander Albon with Red Bull and Ferrari. However, my T1 team does not have a great budget, but this is my T3 team, and this is kind of where I've gotten lucky with my cost cap. So right now it is looking like Sergio Perez, Nico Hulkenberg, Lance Stroll, Carlos Sainz, Yuki Tsunoda with Ferrari and Aston Martin. I went with Aston Martin in Japan to get that last 0.5 boost for them before they kind of left the cheap bucket and went into the mid-price bucket. But they will be going next week as they are too expensive now. They're not worth the kind of budget gains anyway. So this team, I used the limitless chip on this team in Shanghai as well. So they don't have a limitless for Miami. However, wildcard is definitely in the picture here because I'm gonna have to take out all of these guys. Let's get Max in. Let's get Red Bull in. That leaves me with 29.9 in the bank. And it gives me a little bit of leeway with the back markers. I can get, if we sort by value here, I can get Nico Hulkenberg, I can get Albon, I can get Zhou Guanyu and Logan Sargent with 1.4 to spare. So I can actually bump myself up from a Nico to a Kevin, and I could even just only ride with one. I could go double Haas here. So Max, Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hulkenberg, Zhou Guanyu, and Logan Sargent could be in play as well. That would give me double Haas, who keep picking up points, keep kind of getting it done, keep rising 0.5. That would definitely require a wild card for me here. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 5 changes. So I'm not going to take a negative 30 to get Max in the team. Keep building budget here with that team, but this is possibly an option if you've already used the limitless chip. If you have a lot of budget kind of to play with, you could be looking at something like this. There could be some of us that even can afford to get up to like a Lance Stroll with a Max. That would be quite a big leap, I think, for this team. Let's see if I go down to Valtteri Bottas here and Lance Stroll. So I would be about 2.7 short, but I know there's a lot more teams there with more budget than I. So yeah, you could be looking at a Max, Lance Stroll, Valtteri, Logan, and Zhou Guanyu squad for Miami, and that would be quite nice. You probably gain a lot of budget there. 3 back markers, I'd be having 4 in my team 1, so I'd feel better about this lineup than the other. But I think the more balanced way to go about it would be to get both Haas guys in, for me at least. Maybe even Yuki if I don't want to expose myself too much to like a Haas, like a poor Haas weekend. This leaves me with 7.6 million. So yeah, I could go Max, Yuki, Nico Hulkenberg, Alexander Albon, and Logan Sargent here in my T3 with the one that kind of has more budget. But let me know in the comments below who your favorite back marker is. Potential episode, I guess, about how the back markers are doing. I did that last year. It seemed fairly popular. So definitely when one of the longer breaks come along in the F1 calendar, we'll be taking a closer look at how the back markers are faring in the 2024 season. Looking ahead, here is the schedule for the Miami Grand Prix race in the southern part of the United States. Friday, we've got practice 1 and sprint qualifying, followed by Saturday sprint and the Grand Prix qualifying, and Sunday is the Grand Prix. But the most important thing is that F1 Fantasy has maintained and kept the sprint race as the deadline for our lineup lock. So it was very handy in Shanghai to have that, as we kind of had a wet Friday. We had really no idea what was going on. It gave us so much more time to prepare, kind of think things through. We got the F1.com practice debrief. We got some simulations from F1 Fantasy Tools, from 11ify. Very handy to have that extra amount of time to decide on our strategy for our F1 fantasy teams. But it all kicks off in Miami at 12:30 on Friday with practice one. Then sprint qualifying is at 4:30. The sprint race the next day is midday. So that's going to be East Coast time at 12 o'clock. And that will be 5 p.m. in the UK, 1700. So definitely make sure to set those lineups, get them locked in there. I know it says 1500 on the graphic right there, but yes, no, 1700 for the sprint deadline. And it's going to be fun. There's going to be, I'm sure Miami is always a spectacle. So there'll be lots of media. Hopefully, we get some word on the upgrades, what's coming, what's not. But that will be covered more in depth in next week's Miami Grand Prix preview, hopefully with a guest. But that is going to do it for the Chinese Grand Prix review. Once again, yeah, the podcast is on a new feed now. So Sports Social Podcast Network has been incredible, reaching out, kind of trying to get this going off the ground. So F1 Fantasy Pole Position is the name of the new show. Go check it out, download it, give it a like, share it to any or all your other F1 Fantasy Manager friends. We'd greatly appreciate any support. Very excited for the development of like the show and just where we will go in the future. But let me know what your questions are ahead of the Miami Grand Prix preview next Monday, Tuesday. That's when it'll come out. So looking forward to that. Let me know. Hit me up on X at UNFPL, where I will be happy to discuss any F1 fantasy questions with you ahead of the first American race of the season. But once again, thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next time.